Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of not just the Locked On Padres podcast, but the Locked On MLB Prospects podcast. It is like a Locked On crossover special event for Monday, December 6th. I, of course, the one speaking, am your host with sometimes occasionally the most, Javier Reyes. You can find me on Twitter at Javipeno, Javiipeno. And I'm being joined by a man of many talents. Do I have to count it off like this is a WWE? All right, he hosts the Locked On MLB Prospects podcast. He's the co-founder of Just Baseball, a fantastic site that I contribute to myself. And he's also a host of said Just Baseball show podcast, their frontline, whatever you want to call it, podcast. And he also talks to minor leaguers all the time. Just in general, he likes baseball a little bit and whatnot. Everybody, I'm being joined by Aram Leighton. Sir, how you doing?
That was a great intro. I'm doing well, man. Thank you. And you did forget one thing, though. You forgot Outside the Box with Jeff Conine. That podcast, too.
Oh, no. Oh, yeah. Outside the Box with Jeff Conine. Recently,
we just talked to
Jason Stark on the pod. I know. They just talked to Jason Stark. It was a great interview. Everybody who's listening for Makers and Locked On MLB Prospect, hashtag first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. For today's pod, man, I brought on Aram for a bunch of reasons because he's been on this podcast arguably too many times. Right? I mean, let's be honest, probably too many times that you give me the time of day. I brought him on the podcast to talk about AJ Preller, to have a little bit of a back and forth. I'm going to be defending the man who was once had like a 100% approval rating amongst Padres fans, to be honest with you, and now it's slipped a little bit. Then we're talking about the Adam Frazier return that happened 2 weeks ago now, which feels a little strange that trade was so long ago. And then we're going to be talking about Jorge Alfaro, who is from your beloved Marlins, a little bit of Nick Martinez stuff, just an all-encompassing sort of chat, because that's what we do. We talk about baseball, man. But first, before we get into that, just how are you spending your Saturday? How was your holiday? We recently passed Thanksgiving not too long ago. How you faring out there?
Yeah, man. Thanksgiving was. I think it's fun. It's a good holiday. It's all right. Like, I enjoy the family time.
Yeah, I forgot about this.
I think it's. Yeah, you know my hot Thanksgiving take. But no, it was really nice to have the whole family together. That side of it was awesome. Everything's been good, man. The time leading into the lockout, I mean, the amount of stuff we were pumping out at justbaseball.com, just for all of the free agent stuff and all the discussion. I mean, it was great. Of course, you go from 100 to 0, but now I just got to shift more towards prospect write-ups and stuff. So I'm excited to keep pumping out prospect stuff as well over the next, hopefully, only month or so before we get locked down.
Yeah, hopefully, right? We're always hoping out here. But I say, without further ado, let's get into it, man. Prospect stuff that is more what you're known for. I mean that in like the slightest of ways, because you're known for just prospects. You are a little bit. You've called yourself a prospect freak before. We're gonna get into that in a little bit, but first, let's start with AJ Preller, man. One sentence or a couple sentences. What is your take on AJ full? Because remember, this is going to be said to Padres fans as well. Be careful, or not be careful. You could go all for it. I don't know. You want to get canceled again? No problem. It's whatever you want.
I do think that AJ Preller is a great baseball mind, obviously, and definitely has done a lot of really good things, and he has put this team in a good spot, but has also been part of the reason why. There's a couple analogies, and they both are basketball analogies that I want to give. But my co-host at the Just Baseball show, Jack McMullen, gave the analogy of him being like Preller being like J.R. Smith, where the guy's just going to chuck it up. He's going to chuck some crazy shots. He's going to hit them. He's going to hit some big ones. But, man, he's going to miss bad sometimes, and you're going to be scratching your head. I also see him a little bit of like the Mike D'Antoni type, where it's like he's going to be the reason why you're competitive, but he's also going to be the reason potentially why you can't win a championship. And I'm not saying the Padres can't win a championship, but I do feel like a lot of these uber aggressive moves, sometimes set them back. It's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And that's where I'm a little bit, and we'll get into the specific moves as to why I say that. But
Mhm.
overall, I mean, look, this Padres team is much better than it was previously. He's made arguably one of the best trades of all time with Fernando Tatis, and there's a lot to like. He took this team from a bad spot to a great one, but he depleted the farm system fully. I mean, it's one of the worst farm systems in baseball now. And would you say that you feel fully optimistic season here that the Padres can compete for a World Series?
I mean, first of all, I have to say, my skeptic work. Before we started recording this, I sent a bunch of threats because Aram first came out and was like, I'm out on AJ Preller. He likes to start big with a lot of his takes, and then he takes a second to boil them down and whatnot and say, all right, maybe I'm not that out already. Because this is what happens when you're on the big stage, Aram. But that being said, no, yeah, I'm not feeling as good as I feel about the Padres. Heading into 2020, I think that there was a lot more excitement with the team. It's really hard to view him these days. What I mean by that is I kind of don't know sometimes whether or not whether he should be getting as much criticism or not, because we talked about it. I've talked about it at least on this podcast before about the Athletic article that came out, and that was kind of talking about the dysfunction or a little bit of dysfunction. But what I found was interesting about that articles, there's still a lot of defenders. This wasn't like the Rockies article that came out before the 2021 season where everyone was like, no, there's not a single person defending what the Rockies are doing. Everyone's like, this guy doesn't talk to anybody. And then needless, Jeff Bridges ends up I think resigning, actually, which was I think he resigned. I don't think he was fired. I think he resigned, whatever that means. But with Preller, it's a little bit of both. It's very, I mean, the J.R. Smith comp is right. In a lot of ways, he's going to make a lot of big shots. He's going to miss a lot of them too, because you look at, I think he actually gets a little bit too much credit for the Trent Grisham trade, because that one, I mean, last year it wasn't as good. The year before it was good, but Luis Urias and Eric Lauer weren't too. The Padres could have used an Eric Lauer towards the end of the season. So I think what people have to realize is, some people get in my mentions and whatnot saying they're prospects and they're not proven quantities, and that is true. But if you just look at this, what is it, 9 players for 31? Sometimes just having the depth, even if it's a guy that's good for you for like, I don't know, 2 weeks, that helps, especially in a crowded division with the Giants and the Dodgers. And I think people sometimes forget that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point too. It's not necessarily about the individual prospects that you're dealing. It's more of the value of the asset, right? Because you only have so many assets that you can now translate into big league talent. And I know that really like dehumanizes them. But if we're talking about it from a general manager perspective, you have to look at it like you're trading assets here. And when I look at the prospects, I'm never going to be, even though I'm a prospect guy, I'm never going to be a prospect hugger. I understand that the ultimate goal is to compete. But when you have, let's say, 5 prospects who are top 100 like valued by the general consensus, those are the only 5 you have. So you better use those wisely if you plan on trading from some of them to go get a big league impact player. Because if you miss on that trade, you're not going to have – there's not just more top 100 guys that pop up every single day. And what we saw is the Padres did a good job building up their system. But through the minor leagues, they've hit a bit of a stalemate. I mean, they fired their farm director. We've seen some struggles with some of their top prospects. I think Gore's a little bit of an isolated issue, but – there hasn't really been anybody that's emerged all of a sudden either. So I think part of that's because they've been competitive. Part of that's because they've traded guys away. And I'm not going to knock it on that side of things as much. Where I'm a little bit just nervous and skeptical on Preller is I think some of the latest moves that he's made are an example of especially in the trade market, how impulsive he can be. I think we talk about assets, right, and treating it as maximizing value. I don't think he focuses on maximizing value. I think he focuses on getting what he wants when he wants it, which I think is okay at times for a general manager. But you got to balance all that out. Even the Dodgers, they go get what they want when they want it sometimes, but they also are very calculated with the moves that they make, and they don't just trade just to trade. I think the Adam Frazier deal, that was a guy that, look, I didn't think he was going to go from 800 and change OPS to a 600 OPS. But I think everybody on planet Earth knew he was going to regress, right? Like everybody, even Padres fans were assuming he was going to regress a little bit. You're buying at peak value there. You look at Blake Snell. Blake Snell, you are buying at absolute peak value. He finished fantastic to the year, and I still think he's a great piece there. But that's another one where, like, you're going peak value. Yu Darvish, peak value. Like I think it's okay sometimes, but he doesn't care about where he's getting these guys at, and he's just wants to get who he wants to get. I think that's a risky proposition, and you're diluting a lot of your assets.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that, at peak value is a good point with the Blake Snell trade for sure. And especially with Adam Frazier, which I think one of the things that my biggest problem with the Adam Frazier trade wasn't necessarily the prospects. Look, I made fun of this before, the Yu Darvish thing. I still think it is one of the funniest things I've ever seen. I make this joke all the time when people are like, I think it's Blake Hunt, I think is the name of the prospect. I'm blanking on him right now. But I'm not making fun of the guy's talent. I'm making fun of when people were like, yo, but check out this video of him hitting this bomb. And it's like this potato camera. I think Jeff Passan actually tweeted this. Like, check out this one dude. It's like this dude playing soft toss and then launching a ball. It's like an iPhone 5 that's recording it and whatnot. I'm like, okay, relax. You know what I mean? Let's relax on all that. Let's not act like this video showed us like he's going to be a superstar. At the time, he was, I think, still in single A. So that's a whole.
It was probably Reginald Preciado who the video was of.
Yeah, it was probably that one. It was probably whichever one it was. I forgot. It was in the Yu Darvish trade. But let's also let's talk about another asset really quickly, Aram. And this is an asset that I hold higher than most assets. You ever heard of Built Bars?
I thought you were going to say Eric Hosmer.
No, definitely not Eric Hosmer. Guys, this holiday season, grab the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, or even better than a candy bar sometimes. I agree. I've had these things before. I spam our group chats a lot. Cherry Barcia, one of my mom's favorite flavors. I'm a big apple almond crisp guy, but in general, what I like about them, great variety of flavors. Kind of like the Ben & Jerry's of protein bars in a lot of ways. They've got coconut, they've got caramel, apple stuff, whatever. They got all sorts of things, and they're perfect, and they got new holiday flavors coming out, and they're healthy for their protein bars, low carbs, high protein, all that sort of stuff that you could want. It's really kind of the perfect treat. When these things come in the mail, I get happy every single time, guys. So if you don't want to miss out on them, go to builtbar.com. And because you're listening to this podcast, use the promo code LOCKED15 and you'll get 15% off your order. Remember, that is built.com for 15% off. Use code LOCKED15. Built Bars, go check them out, guys. They're the hot thing. And as always, thank you, everybody, for making Locked On Padres and Locked On MLB Prospects your first listen every day. Really great podcasts, I think, in a lot of ways. But let's get back into the picture. And here's the thing. A bit on my podcast, I cannot say the name of the first baseman for the Padres. I do not say his name. So you can say his name. That's fine with me. But no, he is not an amazing asset. But that kind of translates to the next part of this. What are the specific deals that you bring up with Preller in terms of the negative that you think really do encapsulate what you were saying before? It's like he's a little bit impulsive. And because we already talked about the Tatis deal. That deal alone, I wonder, and I would love to ask you this, if that deal doesn't happen, we sure, what does it look like, the kind of view of AJ Preller without the Tatis deal? You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of questions there, but go for it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big one, right? Like, if he doesn't do that, it's interesting. I think the Cronenworth move is one that is another really, really good trade. Tommy Pham slowed down last year, was not himself, but I mean, Pham was good the year before that. But I mean, Cronenworth's the real piece there that you're getting. And I still think, even though people are kind of wising up to how good he is across the game, I still think he's one of the more underrated players. Like, I think he's just going to be perpetually underrated. Austin Nola is another one that, you're buying at peak value again, right? Like, and again, sometimes that's fine. Sometimes you're just getting a good player. But this is a career minor leaguer. I think Nola's a solid catcher at this point. I think he's solidified that he's a solid catcher when he's on the field. But you're buying at peak value with a dude that's only had 79 games of success at the big league level, really. That's a little crazy to me. I guess it was a little more than 79 because it was partially through the shortened season too, if I'm not mistaken. But like, I just don't understand some of, like, always buying at peak value is kind of my concern there. I think for the package that they gave up for Nola, they could have made a trade for a more established, maybe younger catcher because they did give up a decent amount in that Austin Nola trade. They did give up a decent amount in the Adam Frazier trade. I mean, it wasn't groundbreaking. I'm a little bit lower on Marcano, so it's not a big deal. But when you also look at the idea of like, oh, we can't lose Profar, let's give him 3 years, right? It was 3 years that they gave him, right? Yeah, that's another one where it's like, what is Profar's a good utility player, but do you think that he is that good that you can't lose this guy? I think he's incredibly replaceable. He's never had more than a 3 WAR season. I think his best is 2.8 FWAR, and his year with the Padres was 1.3 in the FWAR department and a 112 WRC plus, which is fine in a shortened season. And they're like, we got to bring this guy back. I just think some of it's a little bit surprising to me, just how you have to make these moves. I think they're a little bit over aggressive.
Yeah, absolutely. And I probably my fault. I didn't criticize the Profar move enough. I actually think that I was campaigning for Brad Miller, which again, it's not like that.
Rather have him.
Yeah, but for the contract, I think I'd rather have Brad Miller for sure. And Profar, I will say I love Profar though. I will say that I do love that guy. His smile is infectious. I enjoyed watching him in 2020. Maybe I was a little bit like maybe a little bit of a slide, but that is a good point. My counter to that will be sometimes he doesn't just go for guys at peak value, and I think that that's where the best moves come from. Obviously, he traded Shields at peak value for Tatis, or not even at peak value, but just took a lottery ticket on this 18-year-old kid, and then all of a sudden he's kind of one of the stars of baseball. But Joe Musgrove. One of the things about Musgrove, and I think we're going to talk about Nick Martinez in a little bit because that was a recent signing that he made. One thing that I liked about, and this is extremely casual baseball fan type of take, but about Musgrove when they were going after him was there was a lot of interesting and good teams that were curious about him, and there was actual mechanical changes that happened with him too. It was like, he doesn't throw particularly hard, like I get that, but slider and the curveball usage. So I was like, why is every team into this guy at the deadline in 2020, which some people kind of forget? Not literally every team. This isn't Max Scherzer, but there was a lot of people interested in him. So they make the trade. They don't give up too much for him. That was a home run hit on his part.
That was absolutely a great trade. And that's something I'm glad you brought that up too, because not to cut you off, but that was one of the few examples of buying just before the peak, because they were sold on the adjustments he made. That was a good move.
Mm-hmm. That's my thing. And I think that the Trent Grisham trade, not that it's necessarily looking as great right now. It's a little bit even, I would say, right now, just based on the package that they gave back to Milwaukee. But in the moment, he kind of bought him on the low. That guy made like one of the most infamous playoff errors in a long probably absent is Game 5 with the Dodgers, which, man, you want to talk. That's why you watch baseball, ladies and gentlemen. That was like one of the best games of my life right there.
That was unreal.
From the Padres wildcard game. But that was good. So he has done it before, but in general, I do agree. Obviously, the guy that they have at first base right now, he has a career high in batting average and on base. And then they sign him to I can't even say it. I don't want to say it, man. I don't have the heart to. I just don't. I don't have the heart to say it anymore. It's broken me. But they do that. You have with Machado, which is fine. I mean, Machado was a top level player. It's fine. Everybody wanted him. That showed that they were very, very.
No, I like that.
Very, very serious about all. It is a point. And then Marvel Studios. What if? I think about it a lot of times. What if we had Ty France as our first baseman instead right now? And then you know what? Screw it. Yeah, I'll take Hedges. I don't care. I'll take Hedges or Mejia. We can play that game until Luis Campusano comes up. There's a lot of what ifs with the Padres. And it's not as top 5 GM guaranteed as I think he once was by a lot of people, especially after the whirlwinds of the last year.
Yeah, I mean, I think you bring up a really good point there too, because it's like sometimes you have to have a better pulse of what you have currently. The grass is not always greener, and that I know that Ty France has really exploded into a player that very few expected him to be. But I think you also that was somebody that when I broke down the trade, I think I came on your podcast and I was like, dude, you might feel the Ty France one a little bit. Like that's a good piece that they gave up. Like Ty France is one of those guys that to me is exemplifies what is missing in the scouting department a little bit, where he doesn't have a freakish tool, so we overlook production. But the guy was unconscious in 2019. In 76 games, dude, he hit 400 in AAA. And I know it's PCL, whatever. I don't care. It's a 196 WRC plus. You look at AA, the years prior, absolutely hit well through those years. So that's somebody that's just always hit. and you're throwing him into a deal there. Like, I understand you had Hosmer at the time, you think he's good, like that's fine. But then you look at the two catchers, like you mentioned, that they trade out too. A platoon of Mejia and Hedges would have been just fine. Would have been just fine,
especially when you know you have someone in the hole. Especially when you know you have Campusano coming up. It's like, you know what? Everybody's having career years. How about we just ride this out? You know what I mean? Even Myers is having a career year. So.
And if you hold on to those two guys somehow, I mean, I know Mejia helped get you Snell, but I think you could have got Snell without doing all that. And Mejia was one of the tertiary pieces, or maybe the fourth piece, honestly.
Yeah.
Then you never have to trade for Austin Nola. You know, you don't really have to ever make that deal for Nola, and that's where it's all about timing and understanding what you have. And Mejia seemed a little bit doomed at the time. But then that can also circle back to just development and that side of things too. So there's a lot of like little holes. I think Preller's willingness to be aggressive sometimes can skip over those little holes that they have right now in their organization. But you kind of see them make their way through when you go in hindsight and kind of see how, you borrowed from Peter to pay Paul, and then you still end up a little bit deficient in certain areas. And I think that's kind of where Preller's at, where I feel like he's almost just running on a treadmill sometimes. And he makes the best of it, but it's something that I think, if he was more calculated, I think that the Padres could be in a better situation.
I agree. And I think that the last thing we kind of finish our Preller sort of overview and whatnot, this ended up not being nearly as antagonistic as the podcast it would be, which is fine. I'm all for that. Maybe another time when the next being the biggest example was traded all for these guys, Justin Upton and Myers, and looking back, it's like, oh my God, they traded all those prospects. They traded away Trey Turner for Will Myers. GMs, from my experience, you're done. You're minced. You're finished. And now all of a sudden he's bounced back. Can he do it again? I don't know. I'm not guaranteeing that, but I am saying that in fairness of the broad spectrum of GMs. The Pittsburgh Pirates GM that made that Chris Archer trade, I don't think he's there anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm pretty sure he's not there anymore. So, like, there are people who have been extinguished for some of the misses that Preller has made, but I do think that he might be one of those rare cases where you got to give it a second. You got to wait and see what he's able to pull off. But I will also say to Padres fans, given what we've all just talked about just now, let's not be so bullish on being like, yeah, let's go give that big contract to Nick Castellanos. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying I would hate it, but let's just say, has he always done good with these big buying at the peak of their value players? Maybe not. Maybe you just go get some random right fielder who might break out for you.
Well, here's what I kind of see a similarity with Preller, and I think why he'll stick around for a while is I think he will catch lightning in a bottle one year. Whether it's with the Padres or not, I think he is the 2.0 of Dave Dombrowski. And Dombrowski's had some successful seasons, obviously. He's also destroyed farm systems and left teams dead in the mud. So that's the similarity here. I see a lot of similarities with Dombrowski, and if you're risk tolerant, then buckle up. But here's the thing is, how does Preller, let's see, I mean, there's a situation here where health ends up, lucking in the Padres' favor here, and a lot of arms that they're hoping, will be good to go, end up being good to go, and Nola's healthy, and, the teams ends up being really, really freaking good. But the other side of it is that, if they struggle a little bit, how do you improve this team now? There's nobody left that you can really trade from. Are you going to trade CJ Abrams? That guy should be untouchable. No matter how desperate you are. I would never trade CJ Abrams. I know I said I'm not a prospect hugger. That's my exception. And Campusano, you end up dealing him. Now you've got nothing left. Mackenzie Gore doesn't really have any value at this point. Nobody really wants to mess with that. So, like, how does he get out of this now if there is an issue? He left himself with very little wiggle room. And that's where it'll get interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. There's both sides. You could see both sides of the spectrum for how this ends up winding up. He's made a lot of bets, Aram, you know what I mean? And with that transition, let me talk to you guys really quickly about betonline.ag, which has you covered all season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. Your number one spot for all the sports action this season. Head to their new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus. 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus. They got you in basketball. They got you in football, the NHL, the boxing, the UFC, obviously the baseball too, your favorite Vegas casino games, everything. They probably got Oscars props going up right now. For anybody who's heard me before, I hate the Oscars, but you can bet on that, no problem, which might surprise you, Arm, because you know I'm a movie guy. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet all of your favorite sports, guys. BetOnline, where the game starts. And now, my friend, we hit the kind of the final stretch of this pod where I wanted to take advantage a little bit of your super nerddom background. You know what I'm saying? And because there's actually 2 trades that we have to discuss right now. Actually 3, but so 3 moves total that we have to discuss really quickly. The first one that I want to bring up with you is Jorge Alfaro. You are a Marlins fan. The Padres recently traded for him, and you texted in our group chat OMG in all caps, I think 3 times when this happened. Not because this was like when Blake Snell got traded and then they were eyeing Yu Darvish, but like an, oh my God, how do you get rid of Alfaro? Usually not a good sign when you're a fan. So talk about Jorge Alfaro for just a quick second.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure the player to be named later is going to be a lottery ticket of a lottery ticket. You know, like you are playing the lottery to get a lottery ticket. That's how much of a long shot I think whatever the player to be named later is going to be. But you know, Jorge Alfaro, he was a top prospect, and that's the thing. It's like he's a plus runner with ridiculous raw power, but like he also has the highest swinging strike rate in baseball history since we've tracked that.
Oh my God.
I
didn't know it was that bad.
No. And also the highest swing percentage, period. So the guy just always swings. It's bad. He's not a good defender. I'm fairly positive, at least as of the end of the season, tail end of the season, he led Major League Baseball in pass balls despite having half the innings of the catchers behind him. You know, there's a lot of bad stats. Only player in baseball last year to make an error at 3 different positions. I can go on and on and on. But he is a lottery ticket in himself, even though he's 28 years old. He has crazy tools, a rocket for an arm, I mean, mega power, and he's a crazy athlete. So, you know, it's worth it, I think, to take a shot in the dark. I was just shocked that the Marlins even got anything for him. Like, I thought a bucket of balls would do. So, you know, I wish him the best, but, you know, it's going to be a tough one for him.
I think you also said, is Preller down that bad or something like that? It was really weird. The most troubling thing about the move for me was you already have Caratini, you already have Noel, and then you have Campizano on the way. I didn't really understand this. It might be one of those moves that's a meme. Yeah, I mean, it might be a meme. To be honest with you, like this might be a trade that we look back and are like, what the heck? Why did they whatever? And it just has no consequence whatsoever. Maybe that's what happens. I don't know. Maybe they're planning to make another move in the future. Maybe they're shipping off Nola somewhere. I don't know. Who the heck knows? But for now, it didn't make a lot of sense to me. The next one I wanted to talk to you about, which is a little bit more important, this is where your prospect background comes into play. The Adam Frazier trade. We talked about how they bought at peak value. My problem when I said it on my podcast was like, hey, I get it. His heart rate didn't go up. I get it, whatever. I respect people who are like, we actually think this guy might be able to keep this up. That's fine. I like the trade, though, in a vacuum. What I mean by that is Adam Frazier wasn't the type of player that the Padres needed. They did not need an on-base batting average guy. They needed some slugging. They were 22nd in home runs, and they, you know what I mean? Their slugging percentage was really bad, so that's why everyone was talking about Gallo. Whether or not they could have done that is another story. But in a vacuum, I didn't mind the trade, but in terms of what the team needed, I didn't. They give up a lot of stuff, and then they just traded him away a couple weeks ago. How did you feel about the return that the Padres got?
Yeah, so again, I think you got to look at it in a vacuum where if we're ignoring the fact that they gave up a decent amount for Adam Frazier, in terms of what they were able to get back here after he diminished his value pretty significantly in that struggle down the stretch with the Padres, I like the pieces that they got here because I'll start with Ray Kerr, because Ray Kerr is somebody that I
Mm-hmm.
think is actually going to go straight into the Padres bullpen this coming
Mm-hmm.
season. It could be disastrous in the respect that his command is a bit wild. He doesn't have a ton of command, but his stuff is unbelievable. Like, he's a left-handed pitcher who can run it up. You know, he's going to come out of the bullpen, who's going to run it up to triple digits and a wipeout breaking ball that nobody hit. Like, nobody hit. 222 opponent OPS against this breaking ball last year.
I thought you were saying batting average. I was like, wait, what?
No, 222 OPS. And this is in like
Pretty nuts.
a decent amount, like a decent sample size. He's got crazy stuff. The fastball, that's all he needs, is a fastball and a breaking ball. The command made some major strides last year. You look at his numbers. I mean, he struck out nearly 14 batters per 9. I think this guy's going to slide into the bullpen and could be a lights-out lefty in the back end of that bullpen. That's a good piece to get in a deal. Like, if you know that you're not going to get your prospect value back, at least you got somebody that can help your big league team next year. And that's exactly what they did. So I liked that move a lot. And then the other prospect coming in the deal that I also think is interesting, at least as a high floor type of guy, is Corey Rozier. It's got to be Rozier, right? Like Terry Rozier, mm-hmm. Corey Rozier.
Yeah.
Corey Rozier had a fantastic year. Straight out of college, rolled right into low A and took care of business. I think he's a high floor, good outfield bat, can spray the ball over the field, above average runner, fringe plus runner, and just has great bat to ball skills. I think he has a really, really, really high chance of being a fourth outfielder, like a super high floor guy. But there's also potential if he has just the bat to ball skills that I think he might be capable of. He could end up being a decent above average outfielder. The fact that you might get that out of this deal with big league help in the bullpen and a guy that's pretty high floor, at the worst case a fourth outfielder, but in the best case could be an above average, center fielder all around. I like the return. I do. And I'm interested to see how he looks next year. I really like how simple his swing is from the left side. He's a little bit of a throwback player, but sneaky power too, that I think he could actually be a solid piece. So good trade overall. I thought they did a good job of maximizing the value here, given the mm-hmm. circumstances.
Yeah, given the circumstances, given that he didn't do all that great for the Padres, never seemed like he was a great fit in the first place, ended up not being as such. And just getting something back for a player you're not going to really use much. People are kind of forgetting, not that he's great or anything, but you've got Ha-Seong Kim, you've got Jurickson Profar, and maybe CJ Abrams makes his debut. So you've got a crowded infield. So it only made sense to trade at least one of these guys. You weren't going to trade Abrams, and I don't really know what the value is for Jurickson Profar, and I definitely don't know what the value is for Ha-Seong Kim right now. So they decided to do that. I was fine with it. I was cool with it. Retool your farm system. At least it shows that he knows we got to retool a little bit. It's not because they think that these two guys are superstars. It's that the flexibility. That was a great point that you brought up. The fact that if you sign a Castellanos, look at where everybody is on the Padres roster. All of a sudden, there's barely any movable pieces. And that's what becomes an issue. You want to be able to adjust, and adjusting is important. The Atlanta Braves were able to adjust, even though half their roster got destroyed. You know what I mean? In a period of ways, by the way. And then they end up winning the World Series. So not that that it's easy to do what the Braves did, but that's just an example. Last move I want to talk to you about very, very, very quickly, since we're running out of time. Nick Martinez, 4 years, $20 million. AJ Preller just can't resist signing Texas guys. Initial reaction to the trade, and then grade or whatever you do.
Yeah, he had contact with, he got to see him a lot with Team USA. And that's why Preller felt really confident in him, I guess, after seeing him up close pitching in the Olympics. But 4 years is a lot for a guy that has not pitched stateside since 2017. Obviously, Preller saw something that he really liked. Part of me, at first glance, I look at it and I'm like, 4 years, $20 million, that's crazy. But then you realize, Jordan Lyles just got $7 million, and he was one of the worst pitchers in Major League Baseball last year. The difference is that was a 1 year deal. Nick Martinez has an opt-out after 2, which is the other weird part, because if he outpitches his contract, he's going to opt out. So if you get the value that you think you can get, he could opt out. If he doesn't pitch well, he can opt in for 4 years. Why would you put yourself in that kind of catch?
That was the weirdest part for me. Yeah,
that was the weirdest part. It to me says that Preller has a ton of confidence in this guy. But again, you are taking a big risk here to sign this guy to 4 years. But at the end of the day, is $5 million a year going to break the bank for the Padres? Probably not. But that's money that I definitely probably would have spent safer elsewhere. But I'm interested to see how he looks, because clearly Preller is very confident in this guy.
Yeah, clearly, and we'll see how it plans out with his Texas Rangers background. The Padres, I've been saying all offseason, they didn't need to go after a superstar starter. There's too many options in their rotation that, yes, I know they weren't as good last year, but they could conceivably be a lot better. It would not shock anybody if Yu Darvish finishes next year with a 3.1 ERA or even below. It just wouldn't surprise people. So therefore, I do not think they have to go out and get Max Scherzer or Marcus Stroman. And they got that back into the rotation guy. This is better than Vince Velasquez, hopefully, and it's certainly better than Jake Arrieta, who was a... No, I can't do this. I don't want to I can't sink back into those depths. So with that all said, sir, before we kind of close this out, do you have anything you want to plug with your podcast, with all the bajillion of things that you're doing? Just go for anything you've been watching, whatever you want to do, go for it.
Check out the site at justbaseball.com. We just put out our top 10 remaining free agents, which is pretty fun. We're going to be doing a lot of fun coverage throughout, even the lockout, a lot of prospect write-ups as well that you can check out over there. I'll be doing the Padres top 10, even though it's not as inspiring as it once was. There's still some interesting prospects. So that'll be coming up on the horizon as well. So that's what I'm most excited about is getting this website pumping out content even through the lockout, because guess what? We can show the players' faces. So come check us out. ForgetMLB.com.
Bam, that is a great point. Also, I'm part of Just Baseball. I said at the very beginning of this. If you want, you can too. You remember how people used to be burned at the stake in olden times? I will be doing the baseball, the Mario baseball equivalent of that to Aram this coming Friday on Twitch. You can follow Just Baseball fans. That should be a lot of fun. I'm kind of like the Joey Wendell of Mario Baseball. You know what I mean? I just spray the ball over the place. You do a little bit of Adam Dunn. So we should see how that plays out. You guys could check that out. I've got some articles coming out that we can't talk about just yet because I'm not fully on them, but a lot of weird baseball stuff we're going to be working on for stuff, because lockout's going to be wild for probably for a few months now. But yes, guys, thank you as always for making Locked On Padres and Locked On MLB Prospects your hashtag first listen every day. Now make your second listen. Locked On Bets, your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Hosted by your boy Q with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling. It's free and available on all platforms. Aram, this was a blast as always.
Thank you so much, man. It was always a good time. I'm sure I'll be back again soon.
Awesome. And as always, everybody, stay safe and, of course, stay faithful. My Friar Faithful homies, take care.